The University College of the University of Maine system, together with the Maine Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Standards, has formed a partnership to make public information more accessible to Maine's employers.
For the next case, you will see an employee by the name of Gabriel Bautista, who is a driver. He had a case of carpal tunnel from data entry, resulting in 1 day away from work in column K and 0 days away from 0 days of job transfer or restriction. So since there was 1 day away and no days restricted, and it was a carpal tunnel case, which box should you put a check mark in columns G through J and also M1 through M6? Since Mr. Bautista lost 1 day away from work beyond the day of the injury, you would put a check mark in column H. And since this is a carpal tunnel case, carpal tunnel is considered an other illness, so there must be a check mark in column M6. For the next case, involving a Mr. Claudio Lopez, he had a hearing loss case, resulting in 1 day away and 1 day restricted. Where would you put a check mark in columns G through J, and where would you put a check mark in columns M1 through M6? Since Mr. Lopez had 1 day away from work and 1 day restricted, the more serious outcome was a day away from work, a check mark in column H. And because this was a hearing loss case, there must also be a check mark in column M5 under hearing loss. The next case is a privacy case. For now, I would ask you to ignore columns A through F and focus on columns G through M6. In this particular situation, the employee had 1 day away and 150 days of job transfer restriction. The question here is, what was the more serious outcome, the day away or job transfer restriction? In this situation, even though there was a substantial number of days of job transfer restriction compared to the days away from work, the 1 day away from work takes precedence. So therefore, you would put a check mark in column H only, days away from work. And because this is a cut, this would fall under injury, column M1. The previous example was a privacy case. OSHA has some special rules and regulations on how to properly record privacy concern cases. First off, there are certain types of cases that are classified as privacy cases. Any injury or illness to an intimate body part or reproductive system, any injury or illness resulting from a sexual assault, mental illness, including stress cases, I mentioned that earlier, HIV infection, hepatitis, tuberculosis, those are all subject to privacy protection. Any needle stick or sharp injury that is contaminated with another person's blood or other potentially infectious material must be treated as a privacy case also. And finally on this slide, you will see on the last bullet, other illnesses, if the employee voluntarily requests to keep their name off the log. Of note, we are talking about illnesses only, not injuries. And the employee, if the employee asks you to keep their name or any other identifier off the log, you must adhere to their request. Please be aware that under 1904.29, there are special rules for properly recording privacy cases. For column B, you replace the employee's name with the phrase privacy case. And for columns C through E, omit these items if that criteria might identify the employee, such as the job title or where the injury occurred. And for column F, avoid specifics. For example, if it is a needle stick contaminated with another person's blood, you can just say the word cut and you're done. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to be very careful if you do encounter a privacy case. Over the years, I've had several OSHA 300 forms come across my desk where the person could very easily be identified, even though that person's name is off the OSHA Form 300, replaced with the term privacy case. For example, I know of a fairly large medical facility where they put privacy case, but then they indicated RN, the date of the injury. They indicated South Wing second shift, and they described the injury as a needle stick. Now, clearly, that person could be identified should someone else look at that OSHA Form 300. So I urge all of you to please be careful. Please be aware of the privacy case rules. You know your work site better than I do. So please be aware that other employees do have access to that OSHA Form 300 and might be able to identify that person. Under the 1904.29 standard, besides properly recording the privacy case on the OSHA Form 300, you as an employer must still keep a separate confidential list of the case numbers and the employee names. In the back of your forms, there is an example of a privacy case list. There is no official OSHA privacy case list form. What I have included here is an example, which must include the OSHA 300 case number, the employee's name, and it's a very good habit to have the date of the injury, just in case you have more than one privacy case to this individual. Please be aware that no one may view this privacy case list except the employer and/or the following: an auditor consultant hired by the employer to evaluate the safety and health program, workers' comp or other insurance official, or a public health authority or law enforcement agent, such as an OSHA inspector or one of our Bureau of Labor Standards safety and health inspectors. Please, folks, be sure that that list is kept in a confidential, locked environment. You do not want to have somebody accidentally open a file drawer and see the names of the people on that privacy case list. Also, please be aware that only you as an employer and these officials have access to this privacy case list. The people whose names are on there do not have access because they can see other names of people who are privacy cases. Now, going from the privacy case list, what would happen if you made a mistake? If you look on this OSHA Form 300, case number 2 involving John Harks, you'll see that this employee was on the road and got into an accident with the deer. It's my understanding the deer did not have a driver's permit. Anyways, in this case, you will see that the employee had 80 days away from work and no days restricted. However, you find out that that case occurred on a commute. It did not happen during business hours or doing business activities. What do you do in that situation? If you do have a case that you find out later on is not recordable or was improperly recorded, you can always make changes. In this particular situation, because this incident occurred in a commute, it's not even recordable. So just simply cross out the case and include a note as to why this case was crossed out. As I mentioned, if a recorded case is later determined to be not recordable, line out the case and include a note as to why this case was lined out. As a habit, and a good habit, you may want to keep a diary, especially if you have at least one OSHA recordable case a month. Remember, you cap the total number of days away and/or days of job transfer to 180. So it's the sum, again, of columns K and L maxed out to 180 calendar days. And it is perfectly permissible to make corrections using whiteout or erasures or what have you. For some reason, there is a belief out there that once a case is put on the OSHA log, it cannot be corrected. That is not the situation. It is meant to be a dynamic type of document, and it's quite possible that you will be making changes throughout the year.